Some say that living offshore for the tax savings, the extra freedom, and the better lifestyle is a game for a young person. Today I'm going to show why not only couples, but even families can live overseas successfully for the long haul. I was talking to a friend of mine recently who is living in Europe and now wants to come and live in Asia. He's got 2 daughters who are teenagers, and they've been living outside of their home country for about 5 years now. They said that Nomad Capitalist inspired them to do that. They said it's the best thing they've ever done in their life. Their kids have adapted, their kids have thrived, they're happier than ever, and of course, they have more money to put in their pocket. So when I talked recently about how I also reduced my tax rate to about 1% and have been living that way for years, a gentleman named John Doe, I don't think it's his real name, commented about my video. Summary: travel around enough to not be a citizen. Sounds good, but not if you want to raise kids. Let me tell you why there's 2 things wrong with that statement. But first, I'm Andrew Henderson, founder of Nomad Capitalist. We are a boutique consulting firm that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors, just like my friend, who want to legally go where you're treated best, pay less in taxes, diversify and protect your assets, not be owned by just one country, and have all the tools to make sure that you're prepared to live freely in an unfree world. We also host the biggest and best offshore conference called Nomad Capitalist Live. So first things first, I have to say this: travel around enough to not be a citizen. You can travel around the world as what they call a perpetual traveler. You're going to live on tourist visas. Harder than it is. From my perspective, if you're a successful person, probably more stressful than it needs to be these days, right? You can start doing that way, but it's an endless lifestyle, probably not the best approach anymore, from my perspective. So let's say that you're taking my advice and you're living my trifecta method. You live in 3 different places 4 months a year. You're probably going to have a residence permit in each. Maybe one of them is a citizenship. So maybe you got citizenship in Turkey by their investment program. That's your backup passport. You like Istanbul, or you like the coast somewhere in southern Turkey, and you spend 4 months there, and that's probably not going to make you a taxpayer. And so you can have the benefits of citizenship to live there as long as you want without the obligation of paying tax. Okay, you might have a citizenship, maybe you have a citizenship in the Caribbean, you like spending winters in the Caribbean. So maybe you spend a few months in Europe. With Europe, there probably are more tax concerns if you're spending 4 months. But if you got citizenship by descent, or if you have a golden visa or whatever else, you might be either have citizenship or be working towards it. But generally speaking, the places where you're going to live, you would at least have a residence permit. You're not a citizen of those countries. So when he says travel around enough to not be a citizen, right? Sure. But being a citizen in some countries requires you to live there 9 months a year for the next 6 years. You're obviously going to be paying taxes if you're doing that. On the other hand, there's countries you could live 1 day per year and become a citizen after 3 years or 5 years. We're talking about paper residences at Nomad Capitalist Live. So understand that citizenship and tax residence are not the same. The only area where they really overlap is that U.S. citizens and all U.S. persons are subject to tax no matter where they live. However, there are plenty of exemptions and exclusions you can use to reduce your taxes. Now, let's talk about raising kids. Full disclosure, I do not have kids, but I have many friends, clients, others who have kids. And in the aforementioned example, a number of them live outside of their home country or travel around the world. Let's start with the first approach. I don't care if you're single, if you're a couple, or if you're a family with 1 kid or 1,000 kids. You can live the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle living in 1 place, living in 2 places, 3 places. We helped one gentleman, he wanted to live in 6 different places. Or you could just perpetually travel around the world. Now, the perpetual travel part, again, from a tax planning standpoint, requires extra work these days. And is that the best approach if you're successful, that you're always traveling out of a suitcase? Probably not. You at least want some kind of base. But you can choose any of those different options. And so imagine you're a family who lives in some high tax country. Maybe you spend your summers at the beach house or the lake house. Maybe you spend Christmas break for a month down somewhere else. Right, plenty of people are snowbirds. Plenty of people, take extended vacations. I know families who live in the U.S. and Australia. Every year they go back to Greece, for example, because that's their ancestral home. And some of them have gotten Greek citizenship by descent, and they spend their whole summer there, and they can afford to do that, right? And so, what's the difference between that and saying I'm going to intentionally choose 2 places to go that may not be my ancestral homeland, or maybe, hey, why not? But I'm going to leave my high tax country and go live somewhere else. And so you can move to Dubai, you can move to the Cayman Islands, you can move to Kuala Lumpur, you can move to, dozens and dozens and dozens of places. Western Europe, Asia, the Gulf, Latin America, parts of Africa, Mauritius, right? There's places in every corner of the globe where you can live, and you've got tax-friendly policies. It could be tax-free. It could be there's an exemption for you in a country like a Uruguay where they're going to give you multiple years of just not paying taxes. It could be there's an exemption in a country like Portugal or Italy. Or Italy would be more of a lump sum tax. You pay one flat rate of admission. So from Switzerland all the way down to an emerging country in Latin America or Asia, you can dramatically reduce your taxes. So if you don't like Dubai, that's far from the only option. If you don't like living on an island, far from the only option, but you can live in one place. And so living in the United States in one place and living somewhere else in one place really isn't substantially different. I traveled all around Southeast Asia back at the beginning of the 2010s. And one thing that I did, again, even though I was single and didn't have kids, was I went to the international schools in every country and I talked to people because I wanted to get an idea of how that worked. By the time I got down to the level of Laos, it seemed a little concerning. Just the quality, just even the way they treated the kids was Cambodia was like not bad. And the rest of them, like Vietnam, was like really good. Malaysia, really good. Singapore, obviously, right? And so what I found was, even in a place of the world that was largely emerging, you could get very high quality schooling. Now, if you're sending your kids to public school, some of those places are going to charge you 25, 30 grand a year per kid. It's cheaper than a lot of high-level private schools in the US, but it's going to be an expense. So you could choose a place where you send your kids to public schools. There are English-speaking countries in Europe where you could send them to public school. You could also look at the tax savings you're going to have. If you make even $500,000 a year, you will save probably $200,000 or more coming from a high-tax Western country. Even if it's 175, right? You could afford to put one or two kids through private school, and maybe your cost of living goes down. Maybe you're working towards a second passport. I mean, there's so many benefits of living overseas besides just the adventure, besides teaching your kids other things and exposing them to other cultures and giving them a leg up, because this generation is going to be incredibly more international. And so you can do that. What you can also do is you can homeschool, and there are plenty of places in the world that allow you to do that. Just got a report the other day from our team who looked into homeschooling the UAE. In many ways, they encourage it. So you've got a tax-free place to live. You can move your business there if you have one, or you can buy property and get a residence permit. You pay zero tax on your salary. If you run out of a free zone, you're still going to pay zero tax on your company. You can homeschool your kids if you want, or there's plenty of international schools that are no doubt on the higher end in terms of pricing. But if you want that high quality of living, it's a place where you can go. You can speak English, you have all the services that you want. You can take the stress off of your family because you can hire help in a place like that, or in a place like Southeast Asia, or in a place like Latin America. The people are used to hiring household staffs, whether it's a driver, a butler, a nanny, a maid, whatever it is that you want, a chef. Right? That's going to make your life easier. It's probably going to reduce family friction. How many family fights are over, the way you put things in the dishwasher, right? And so you can create an ideal life that's more financially beneficial, an adventure for the kids, potentially helps you work towards other international benefits like citizenship, and that's just a good deal all around while improving your family life. Now, let me go back to that example. Maybe you want to live in Dubai, but you're going to travel every opportunity you get, especially in the summer when it gets hot. Okay, maybe you can go back to your own country and keep that tax efficient. Maybe you'll find another place to go. Maybe there's some other residence permit you want to get. Maybe you want to get a residence permit in Europe and have a golden visa that gives you the option of living in Europe but not the requirement. You may not be able to work towards citizenship with all of them, but maybe you spend your summers in Europe and you tax plan it to where you're in Dubai 8 months a year. And you can pay zero tax, and you're just basically not a tourist, but you're a residence permit holder of Europe, traveling around Europe, and you're teaching your kids that. Okay. Let's say we take it one step further. Let's say you have one place part-time, 4 months, another place 4 months, another place 4 months. What can you do? You can hire a tutor, right? So if you're going to send 2 kids to private school in a place like Dubai, it might cost you 50, 60, 70 grand a year, depending on the schools. We recently did a workup for someone on that and looked at all the different options. You can hire someone for that price. And so things like Malaysia's My Second Home program, someone who's 25 or older, you can bring them in on your residence permit. Or in many cases, you can get them their own residence permit. Or maybe you want to hire someone locally. I would imagine if you have 2 kids for, let's just call it $50,000 a year, in most countries in the world, you can hire an incredibly educated person who will help teach your kids and do the homeschooling for you, because there are plenty of countries where homeschooling is an option. Certainly some countries like Germany, not nearly as friendly, but among the low tax countries, you have a lot of flexibility. 50 grand, you could interview someone, you could find someone who's great. And what I've looked at, for example, was looking at building a villa on some land I have in Montenegro. And one of the things was, let's build a little house out in the back with a couple of bedrooms for a potential future tutor, maybe some household staff, someone who travels with you. And so if you're going 3-4 months at a time, they could get a residence permit in some of those countries, Or potentially, depending on how long you're there, they could just go as a tourist. Montenegro, you go for 90 days. That's what a lot of nationalities are allowed. You just go for the summer. And so depending on how you structure things, you could structure your, the way you live to bring that person with you. By the way, if they're doing homeschooling, maybe you give them a couple months off in the summer. And you don't have to take care of it then. But you can find strategies to handle this. You can rent someone their own apartment. There's many ways you can bring a tutor around with you. Or you can just do the homeschooling yourself. And so once you're doing either of those latter two options, you can move as fast as you want. Now, then the question becomes, what's comfortable for you as the business owner? What's comfortable for your spouse and what they're doing with their business or their income or whatever? And what's comfortable for the kids and what do you believe is best for them? There are families that I know who they travel around every couple months and the kids love it. And so, listen, if you have the ability to be in Europe, you could travel around just within Europe. It's not like you're going all around the world. You could travel within a block of countries, or you could travel all around the world. And so tutors, homeschooling obviously work. If you want to be more fixed, there's really nothing different between living in New York and living in Dubai, between living in Toronto and living in Grand Cayman, between living in Adelaide and living in Lisbon. You can find international schools. You can do homeschooling, obviously, if you stay in one place full-time. You can hire a tutor if you live somewhere full-time. So the idea that continually moving around is not good enough for kids, it can be done. And by the way, kids can maintain friends in numerous different places. They can learn languages. There's a whole lot of benefits that will help them in their career. And I've seen that with families that we've worked with over the years. But on top of that, travel enough to not have to pay taxes somewhere. Sure, that's decent advice for someone who wants all the adventure of life. I like to live in different places. I like to split my time among different cultures and different countries and see everything that's happening in the world. But if that's not as important to you as having stability in one place for your kids, then you can do that too. And you've got dozens of different countries to choose from that will offer you tax benefits, more freedom, and a better lifestyle than what you have now. It's a way of living intentionally, and kids don't have to get in the way.